Hey, Legal Rebels, this is Tom Martin. I'm the founder of LawDroid, and this is my podcast, LawDroid Manifesto, where I interview legal innovators about how they do what they do. In this episode, I interview Nick Abrahams, Global Co-Leader of Digital Transformation at Norton Rose Fulbright and co-founder and investor in LawPath, whose unique journey from Hollywood to legal innovation has shaped his approach to helping small businesses and lawyers embrace technology and AI with purpose and clarity. Welcome to the LawDroid Manifesto podcast. My name is Tom Martin. I'm your host, and I'm thrilled today to have Nick Abrahams on the show. He is co-lead of digital transformation at Norton Rose Fulbright, which is an international law firm that has over 4,000 lawyers, over 50 offices worldwide. But that's just one thing. He's accomplished so much. He is also the co-founder and investor in LawPath, which is Australia's leading legal services platform. It has over 90,000 users. He's an author, he is a keynote speaker, and he's also the co-creator of, I believe, one of the world's first legal AI chatbots, Parker. So with all of that, I'd like to introduce you, Nick, and if you could tell us a little bit about what you're up to now.
Thanks, Tom, and hi everyone. Lovely to be with you. And Tom, I've been a big fan of the podcast and what you've been doing for years. So it's lovely to be here. Yeah. So as was mentioned, I've got the day job with Norton Rose Fulbright. I was the global head of technology and innovation there for 4 years, while still having a practice as well in technology. And then a couple of years ago, sort of transferred into the role that I've currently got, just the co-lead of transformation. And then separate to that, we've got, so 10 years ago, I started an online legal business called LawPath, separate to the law firm. Thank you to the law firm for letting me do that. That business has gone well. Actually, I've got to update my LinkedIn, Tom, because the 90,000 number of customers is a bit late, but it's on my LinkedIn, so it's my bad. We actually hit 500,000 customers.
Oh my!
We've helped. So that's great. So we just hit that late last year, and then we just got a month ago. We just got a $10 million investment from one of the big banks, and I'm very pleased to say that LegalZoom is also an investor in our business. Obviously, a well-known US company. So LawPath is wonderful. It's very much focused on providing legal support to small business, and using AI is a big part of that. And then my sort of the new passion project is it's called the Breakthrough Lawyer Program, which I teach as an adjunct professor at Bond University, one of the big universities here. It's an online course. There's 3 of them. One is on generative AI, productivity training for lawyers. One is a coaching program for lawyers. And the other one is about legal innovation. It's called Legal Innovation Bootcamps, really trying to help lawyers change their practices, because that's quite hard. Yeah, so they're the things I'm up to.
Wow. And before we started recording, you and I were chatting a little bit, and we just have a lot in common.
We got a lot in common. Yeah. Like a mirror image, Tom. We've got the same beards.
You're right.
Brothers. Now that would be because Tom and I, not everyone will know this. Tom and I have a background in movies, so this could be a great sort of movie script right here. We discover that we're actually long lost brothers. Anyway, we'll come back.
Digital twins.
Oh, digital. Nice one.
But yeah, everything from dabbling a little bit in Hollywood to chatbots to just a lot of stuff in between. And you were in Southern California for a while too. Where I'm originally from. And this whole future bit fits in perfectly because you're in Sydney, and so you're literally in the future right now. It's tomorrow. It's my tomorrow.
Oh my God, you can't believe how good tomorrow is, Tom. Let me tell you, tomorrow is sunny and lovely.
Yeah, it looks like it from what I can see behind you. So, all right, I'd like to go back to the beginning with my guests and talk about your origin story. And to me, it's so fundamental and important, like where we start, where we grow up, the influences that we have early on. And so the first question I have for you is, where did you grow up? Was it Sydney?
No, I grew up in a place called Brisbane, which is it's one of the sort of capital cities, I guess, in Australia. But when I grew up there, it was a pretty small sort of place, and yeah, it was a little bit conservative, I think, in the way that it saw things. So small, conservative, nice place, but yeah, that's Brisbane was where I grew up.
And what was it like with your family? Like what kind of work did your parents do?
Yeah, so my dad was a dentist, and so he was incredible. So he lived he practiced as a dentist for 40 years, and he loved every day of it. And he was a big influence on my life. He's a very funny guy, and as in amusing sort of person. And so as a kid, I would go and sit in the waiting room outside of his where he was his surgery, and I would just hear laughter, and often it was his laughter, but there were the patients were from laughing from time to time as well. But he's a very genial sort of person, and really, I think, enjoyed helping people with that. And so he was also just this colossal smoker. And so, that was back in the day when you could do that. And he had two surgeries. I can remember this really clearly. And he'd get through like 35 patients a day. And so when he was finished up in one surgery, his nurse would know to light him up a cigarette. And there was just a little corridor between the two surgeries. And so on the way through the corridor, he would just inhale a cigarette and then start work on the other one. It was a different time. He used to let me play with mercury.
Uh-huh.
We didn't have health and safety rules back then, certainly in Brisbane. Yeah, so it was a great influence. And I can remember, because I've had a bunch of twists and turns in my life, in my career. And at one stage I was definitely sort of not having a great time with what was going on. And I asked him how he had managed to spend 40 years doing something which, most of us would regard, as not an ideal way to be spending your lifetime sort of working on people's mouths and so forth. And he said, and he was not a philosophical person, not at all. Like he liked football and having a laugh. But he sort of, this is the greatest advice he ever gave me. He goes, I don't know. I just enjoyed my clients, and I enjoyed the people that I worked with, and I just tried to stay positive. I was like, oh my God. So and that sort of really has been, a bit of a sort of touchstone for the way I've approached legal practice over the years. So that's dad. And then, so mum mum terrific, supportive in but she had this view that we were still living in the Depression, and so which we clearly weren't. And so we lived a very frugal existence, which was perfectly fine. So there was, a lot of just a lot of not very much, which is great. It sort of made us all very resourceful, and I think that was good to live with that frugality, and without wanting to gross anyone out too much, but to give you a sense of this woman's frugality. We would have to reuse tissues. So you would always put your hand in the tissue box and
Yeah.
hoping that you might get a fresh one. So it was that level. I mean, it's I'm not kidding around here. This was yeah. Anyway, it was fine. That was mum and dad. And I got a brother and a sister a bit older.
Well, it sounds like some good influences for frugality.
Yes, no,
And-
I know how to live very lean. Yeah,
yeah.
Tom, I don't know. I mean, I haven't told that story to anyone. I don't think in like a gazillion years. But literally, it's I still now, it's amazing how your childhood patterns you. But I still now, when I grab a tissue, I still think I'm living large. Like I have no desire to reuse it at all. But I still think I've done okay. So that's, if you set your bar low, you're achieving every day.
That is one of the keys to life, I think.
Mm.
And also the fact that your father, he had such a positive way of framing things where it was about people and it was about positivity and good humor. And I think that will carry most all of us through everything, you
Yeah,
know.
yeah,
Um,
no, I agree. Yeah,
so then had okay, so then you went off to University of Queensland
yeah,
and
that's right.
you
Yeah.
yeah, you got a degree in commercial law.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, I got a degree in commerce and then a degree in law. So they
Oh,
came.
okay.
You got 2 degrees for 5 years worth of work. So it was a common thing to do over here.
Had anybody else in your family focused on that?
No, 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 no. I'm a very they're all in the sort of health care professions, in one way or another. And I had no idea what I was going to do. And actually, when I look back on it, once again, I haven't told anyone this in a gazillion years as well. But the lady who looked after our careers advice at school, she
Yes.
had a very she had a very narrow focus on things, and so she advised us all to do what was called commerce law. And literally, out of a class of 140, 21 of us did commerce law at Queensland University. So it was a very, I mean, it just ended up that way. So anyway, so I ended up there without really, it wasn't like I came from a legal background or had any thoughts about law.
Wow, she was really a pipeline too.
Yeah, maybe she was getting a kicker. I don't know, but it certainly, well, it meant when you got to law school, there was plenty of people you knew. So lots of people to get notes off and so forth.
Well, I'm kind of curious though, since the family had more of a healthcare bent, did that present an issue at all, or did you pursue it maybe because it was something different that you weren't as familiar with? Like what was the motivation
Yeah.
taking
Yeah.
that step?
Yeah, so the drive, and I feel like Tom, I feel like this is the therapist couch, which is, but anyway, that's
Make
I'm
yourself
happy to
comfortable.
share. I feel like you're not going to relent, so I might as well lean in. But so the family dynamic wasn't 100% terrific, if you like. But I can remember MASH. Do you remember MASH, the TV show?
Yeah, Alan Alda and all that.
Yeah, Hawkeye and so forth. I became fixated on that, and I became fixated on the idea of how happy that made me feel, that particular show. And literally, I mean, this is bizarre. So you record it, on the old audio tape, play and record, and I would record those and listen to it endlessly because obviously we did VCRs and so forth. So I was definitely sort of with that, and so I had this idea that I was going to in some way make TV. Like that was sort of my idea. I didn't know how that would happen. And where I grew up, I mean, there's not a direct line from Brisbane to Hollywood at all. So that was what I wanted to do because I thought those stories made me feel good, and I felt like that was a good thing to do. So when I went to university, I in the back of my mind I was like, well, go to university, and I'll figure out how all this happens. And it seemed to me that commerce and law seemed like business, and I had enough of an idea to understand that making TV shows was about business, and so going into a healthcare profession wouldn't get me the TV show. So that was that was the vague thinking, but it was only vague. I had no actual idea at that stage. I was just, okay, well, I'll sort of try to make a go of it here, and then in some way I'll figure out how to branch into making TV.
So I want to jump to USC really quickly after that because
Mm.
it's totally connected. But just before we get there was a few years between university and then going to USC.
Yeah.
What happened then?
Yeah. So what happened was maybe I've got to update my LinkedIn. Clearly, I've got some gaps in my thing. So what happened was I graduated from University of Queensland in law, and then for 4 years I worked with one of the major firms in Sydney, um, and that was fine. Now I sort of, got along well. I, worked hard and got some great experience, had some wonderful mentors, really, a wonderful experience. And then I worked in Tokyo for one of the law firms over there. And so that was the day job. And then, as you can tell, I've always had sort of sidelines and side interests. And so while I was doing that, I was also in Sydney. I was doing stand-up at night and stand-up comedy, and I'd been interested in that, and that was fun. And then I got to Tokyo and saw an opportunity there because there was no English language comedy. So I started my own comedy club, and because that gave me time on my feet. And when you're doing comedy, what you critically need is a lot of time on your feet to get timing right and so forth. And so I created my own club, and that went actually pretty well. And one of my proudest achievements is that I sold that to some friends of mine when I left 25, 30 years ago, maybe now. And it's still going today. It's called the Comedy Store, the Tokyo Comedy Store. So I created that, and then that went well, luckily. And I got approached by one of the TV network, Tokyo Broadcasting System, to create a TV show for them based on me. And, I was in my late 20s, I guess, mid to late 20s. That seemed like a pretty good idea to me. I'm like, okay. And they were convinced I would be the Seinfeld of Japan. And, who am I to say no to such lofty ambitions from a network executive? So I wrote the show. I was in the show. They shot the show, and so they broadcast it twice, and it didn't rate. So it was just a pilot. It didn't. There was, just didn't get any pickup there with the broader audience, and so that didn't happen. But that was my stepping stone into USC Film School.
Wow, that's thank you. That was a perfect bridge there, and just an amazing story, like so packed full of stuff.
See how it's? I don't know. You're very good at this question thing. Or maybe I'm just a talker. Anyway,
Well,
so that's how I got to SC.
Yeah, you're an international man of mystery. So yeah, then you go to USC Film School, which I had shared with you was exactly about the same time I was working in Hollywood.
Yeah.
So you ended up working on the John Wells production, right?
That's correct. Yeah. So out of SC, and SC was amazing. I mean, that was truly a transforming experience. And and I think just because I think this is really important. One of the things that film school taught me that I don't think you learn necessarily in law school, but it's really come back to me right now, is in film school, you help everyone, literally, because you're all poor, you're all desperate, and you're all struggling to make a dream come true, and you just need other people to help you. So, literally 18 hours a day, you were working on films, and they might be Super 8 or 16 mil or whatever. It was the very early days of video, but we were still shooting on film for the most part. But we did do some video. And so people would ask you to, help out, whether that was, they needed someone to do sound or just, help drive people around or whatever, or do editing. And so there was only 20 of us at this particular program at USC Film. And we were all helping each other. And that was what they taught you at SC Film. They said, whenever anyone asks you, if you can help, you should. And I've always believed that and followed it. And it still holds true to this day. So one of the 20 at SC Film was a guy called Rawson Thurber, who's a genius. And he's the writer and director of Dodgeball, We're the Millers, Red Notice, the rock vehicle, which is super successful on Netflix a year and a half ago. And so Rawson, he's a superstar by any measure. And I called him up when I was starting, my course, the Breakthrough Lawyer. I said, Rawson, would you do? Because I know you sold Red Notice on a pitch to the studios, and it was a $200 million budget. How do you pitch And would you do a session for the Breakthrough Lawyer for my students on how to pitch? Because lawyers aren't very good at pitching. We're not great at selling ourselves or the services we've got or the innovative ideas. And Rawson's immediate response was, yeah, I'm happy to help out. And that sort of generosity. And in fact, it's now he's over here in Australia right at the moment shooting a film, Voltron, and he's actually going to come to Sydney and host a screening for the 21st anniversary of Dodgeball for the students of my program, the Breakthrough Lawyer. So he's going to come and meet there's 700 people. So it's yeah, so this is a massive digression, but it's super, super important. And it's really only sort of dawned on me in recent weeks how valuable that was, particularly because of Rawson's generosity. So yeah, that's sort of has served me well, that thing, which is if someone asks you and you can help them, then you should help them.
Well, I really take your point to heart because I had a similar experience in Hollywood that,
Right.
it definitely imbues a camaraderie amongst everyone because you never know where help is going to come from or who you can help. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's also a commonality, I think, within our smaller legal tech community is that
Yes.
it's such
I
a small
agree.
community.
So that's it. I was speaking at a legal tech conference yesterday, and someone said to me, you know what's interesting about legal tech providers is the vendors. They don't talk down the opposition or their competitors. It's and it's so true. Like I don't get that sense of, that legal tech vendors are like, oh, don't use this one or don't use that one or whatever. Everyone, because it's actually, and maybe it's because it's a similar sort of landscape because in Hollywood, it's a bit brutal, as I think you and I both experienced. It's hard and the hours are long, and it's just difficult. And to win is difficult. And so you try to help everyone. And I think the same is true of legal tech. I mean, you and I sort of started in the legal tech world, well before the AI boom. So legal tech is now something you can say that you do, whereas few years ago, when I started LawPath 10 years ago, oh my God, people were like, oh, it's going to fail. It's a stupid thing to do. Da, 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 da. So maybe it's because of that, because it's just hard and it's a bit contrary to there's obviously, you can just be a lawyer and do things, and that's great. And there's nothing wrong with that. But maybe because of the sort of the difficulties that brings people together.
Yeah. One thing I want to ask you about is that we kind of jumped around, but you went to USC Film School, but then you ended up coming back to the law, and how did that happen? And I do want to talk about LawPath and NRF and all that good stuff, but what was that transition there?
Yeah. So, just to contextualize that, so I was at Warner Brothers. I was a creative executive, so I had the job I'd always wanted. I was making TV, and so.
And by the way, you're understating it. John Wells Production is the one, by the way, everyone who did ER. So
that's right.
At the height.
Yeah. So I was working on ER, and then a guy called Aaron Sorkin came in with a script called The West Wing, and we were working on the development of that. So it was next level. It was unbelievable, and that pilot script for West Wing, which when we shot it was almost word for word the script that Aaron Sorkin delivered first up. So there was not any development to be done, but obviously writers and directors and actors and what need to be put there. But so it was incredible. It was exactly what I wanted to be doing, but I'd had a side business, side interest, which is I owned a script which I thought was a really good script, and I needed a star to be attached to it.
Yeah,
that's the way it works there. If you can, if you can get a star to say that they'll be in your film, then you can get funding. And so it was the mid to late 90s, and back in those days, I sent letters to about 100 agents and managers, probably to UT8 from where you were, and just effectively begging them to have a read, and maybe they would, maybe they'd be interested in it, or one of the people that they manage. Anyway, so I sent it out, and days went by, no calls, and then weeks went by, no calls, and then one day the phone rings. It was Woody Allen's agent. And so she says, Woody Allen will do the film. And I was like, "Ooh, okay." And so the film, it was a short film. It was called Searching for Alison Portman. And so Woody Allen did the film. And then around 6 months later, I got an Oscar. Oscar Alexander Abrahams, our first child. So the first of our three sons was born in LA. And that was a massive turning point in my life. So when Oscar arrived, I made the decision. I'd always wanted to tell stories and make TV to help people, but I was like, this is not where I need to be. Hollywood, there's some unusual human behavior goes on in Hollywood, which didn't sit right with my values. And so I literally made the decision very quickly that I was going to raise my family together with my wife back in Australia, and I was going to go back to the law because I'd enjoyed the law, and I figured out that's the way I can help people. I'll help people in the law, and I'll do it that way. And this has been interesting, but I know what I'm good at, and I know what I'd evaluated my life and figured out what I wanted to do. And so I went back to Sydney, became a partner in one of the firms there, a technology partner, and that's been a good practice. And then, but I was still very interested in helping people. And then, 10 years ago when I started LawPath, they say when you start businesses, you should have the big, hairy, audacious goal. And so my goal was to help 1 million small businesses. And, back then people, laughed at me quite literally, because Australia has 2.3 million small businesses. So I was going to help half of them. That's a ludicrous proposition. Anyway, we, after 10 years, we got to 500,000 that we've helped. And we're well on the way to helping more than 1 million. I think the business has really hit a great sweet spot. So, that's the reason. It was, I loved being a creative executive, and don't get me wrong, Hollywood has its peaks, but it didn't fit with what I wanted for my broader life and what I wanted for my family. And so we came back here and we've got 3 boys, and it's a great life. And I'm absolutely clear when I say I would take my worst day as a lawyer over my best day in Hollywood, because I think I've figured out what my purpose is, and so that makes, it gives you the grit when times get tough. And time, it hasn't all been plain sailing. And, as starting a business is far from, plain sailing. But it's been, it's been very, very rewarding. I've enjoyed it.
So the thing that strikes me, and I want to pause on it a bit and ask you more, is that not everyone has that clarity of mind to look at a situation like that, weigh it all, and then choose a different direction, especially when, from what you described, things were going pretty well. How did you get to that place? What was it? Was it something that, in a way of looking at the world that you got from your parents or a friend of the family or relatives or something, like, to take a step back and look at it like that?
I haven't lived in fear of making decisions. I can only say that now and looking back on it. When I look back, I'm like, what was I doing going to film school at, age 29, and then what am I doing, giving up Hollywood and coming back and so forth. But I think, what we teach in the career coaching program is, for lawyers, we get very stuck in doing what we do, and we're unbelievable at it. And because we're all sort of type A, driven personalities, very interested in helping serve people and so forth. And so what I try to help people is, and it's simple coaching at the end of that. So you pull back and you go, what do you want your life to look like? What do you want your life to look like in 10 years, 20 years, 30 years? And then And then based, how big does your house need to be? What does your family look like? What do your friends look like? What do how's your fitness? How's your health? All those important things. Many lawyers don't think about that. And I think that's unfortunate. And so I try to help them with that. And then once you figure out, okay, I want a particular sort of life and what's really important, then that dictates your career. And so for me, I was able to, it sounds, I mean, I don't know what it sounds like, but it's just, it was a simple decision for me. It was a very simple decision. I didn't labor it. I was like, okay, I mean, I'm big on relationships, and I'd always kept great relation with everyone who I've ever worked with. I've tried to be, continue to have great, and I work on those relationships. And so I was able to parlay what I'd done into, an opportunity back in Australia as a partner. And then it's just hard work and sort of hustle to create something. So I think the key is trying to figure out what sort of life you want, rather than going and what is it that you want, not what it looks like from other people. I mean, the number of times people say, you gave up being a studio executive to be a lawyer. Ugh. It's like, well, because people have no idea, what it's like to be a studio executive, and it's a brutal experience. It's not, it's not the worst thing you could ever do, but it's very hard work in a whole lot of different ways, being a lawyer, which is also incredibly hard work. So I think it's just a matter of figuring out what is it that you want, rather than the way it looks from outside. Oh my God, it's so philosophical. I do apologize, everyone. I'm like, oh my God, shut up. Anyway, sorry.
No, I think that's fantastic. By the way, I'm a philosophy major, so I love talking about this.
Oh,
stuff.
right. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. It's all making sense now.
Yeah, it's falling into place.
I see what's going on here.
But I think those are really great words of wisdom, because it's something that I've tried to practice too through my life, is basically working backwards. What do you want it to look like, and then work backwards, rather than staying within this, lane that you've created for yourself and not seeing where you're going.
Yeah.
No, that's great. So let's jump ahead to Norton Rose Fulbright.
Yeah.
The position that you have, digital transformation, that is quite an amazing charge to go after that. What are some ways that you've done that there, and where do you think it's going?
Yeah. So I should be clear. I've got a very lofty title. It's largely client facing, so trying to work with clients on their digital transformation. But I've also got insights and sort of thoughts and around what law firms can be doing and so forth. In terms of and obviously the previous roles I've had with I've been with the organization now 22 years. It's sort of crazy to think about that. It's a wonderful firm, and sorry, maybe I would just say that because I mean it, but it's not. I mean, I'm obviously not a standard partner, and the firm has been incredibly generous with recognizing how to work with someone who doesn't necessarily fit a particular mold. So I'm incredibly grateful. It's been a wonderful firm, and continues to be a wonderful firm. So, but some of the things that we did, the thing that I'm, I guess, most pleased with, this was early days of AI, but it was, you mentioned the chatbot.
Mm-hmm.
So what happened was, and I've been lucky because LawPath has given me a view. I mean, I'm not on the board there. I'm not an executive, anything like that. I am the original founder. I brought in co-founders, and but I still have a lot of knowledge about what's going on. Still a shareholder. But I'd gotten this idea from LawPath that sort of chatbots, and this is about 4 years ago, that chatbots were starting to become easier. And one of the problems I've always had with legal innovation in the technical sense is, particularly in a large organization like ours, you come up with an idea, and then you need to work with the IT team to get it to happen. And then, it takes time, it's expensive. And then, what happens often isn't what you were hoping for. That's sort of been bit of a traditional model. And what I saw with the chatbot proposition back then was that we could create our own chatbot, and it was in privacy. And it would, we'd be able to do it without the help of the IT team. And I think that's really critical. Our IT team is amazing. I'm not saying they're not fantastic. They are absolutely fantastic. But they've got a bunch of things going on. And some, wacky partner who's got a wacky idea about a chatbot is not, that's not going to get the priority, and neither it should. So how is there something that we can do ourselves? And it was before ChatGPT and so forth. And so together with a colleague, just a wonderful colleague, and neither of us are technical as such, we created, using a chatbot as a service platform. It was an AI-enabled chatbot. And so it answered questions. There was a change in privacy law in Australia. And this chatbot, Parker, as Parker became known, answered questions on privacy law. And so on day one of Parker going live, it answered over 1,000 people. It delivered over 30 hours of legal information, was smarter at the end of the day than it was at the beginning of the day, all up in license fees to the chatbot as a service provider. We paid $8. It was just incredible. It was the forerunner to what we're seeing now, what is possible when the lawyers can deal with things. It took us about 30 hours to fill out the templates and so forth. And people were getting on average 6 or 7 questions in, which for a chatbot is pretty good. And 1,000 people. So that to me was a real change in thinking. And we didn't need to use IT other than to put the little widget into our website. And I got to say, our risk people were unbelievable because they backed us. It was particularly 4 years ago, agreeing to put a chatbot live. That's something else. But our team, our risk people were just fantastic. And, I did have to commit to them that I promised it would work. And I went, I went through the process and I explained, because the chatbot wasn't drawing from the internet. It was only drawing from the 30 hours of data that we'd provided it. And then I was like, okay. And we did a webinar for our people around the world, around 4,000 lawyers around the world. 4,000 lawyers didn't watch the webinar, obviously. But we did webinars to say how you could build one in your jurisdiction. And we ended up having, at the height of Parker, 6 chatbots live across the world, all created by lawyers. And it was great. It worked out really well. So that to me was, the first stage of what we now see is possible with AI.
That's fantastic, especially the part about spreading the word across the firm and then them participating in it, because it's really through that collaboration that you feel like an owner of it too.
Yeah. And I think the thing with lawyers too, it's very hard for lawyers to innovate because lawyers are incredibly busy. And it's so unfair to say to them, you know what, you've got to go and learn this new technology. It's like, well, they should only have to learn the new technology if there's a baked-in ROI proposition in that, because you shouldn't be taking up more of their hours. So I've always been very conscious to only ever pitch things and ideas where there was guaranteed return. And with this chatbot, I knew there was. But even then, you will only ever get, a smallish number of lawyers who are interested in doing those sorts of things. And then once it becomes, successful, I guess, or shows that there's value to it, and that's what we're seeing with AI, once you can show that there's true value creation, then more lawyers will come into it. But, it's hard for lawyers.
Well, I'm also curious, with the current crop of generative AI that we have, how you're tackling that, how you're thinking about using that at Norton Rose.
Yeah. Well, maybe rather than, it's probably because I work, effectively I've become a consultant within Norton Rose to in-house legal teams and to other law firms. It's all covered by NDAs and so forth, but I've been helping a lot of in-house teams and a lot of other law firms actually try to understand what their AI strategy is. And the way that I think about it is I've simplified it into it's just a pyramid. And
Mm,
so at the base of the pyramid, if you think of the pyramid, at the base of the pyramid is 100% of your lawyers. And I call it universal AI, could be used at the base of the pyramid. And that is, I think 100% of our lawyers, not necessarily Norton Rose, but I think every lawyer in every legal team, 100% of lawyers could be using what I call universal AI. And so that is, any of the public AI apps, so ChatGPT, Claude, Perplexity, Gemini, being the obvious ones. Obviously, there are massive rules about using it. So, and if your organization says you're not allowed to use it, then you shouldn't use it. And you can't put
yeah.
anything confidential into it and so forth. But, that stuff's free. And I think that people can use it, can play with it, can use it as some sort of, thought generation companion, whatever it is. There's lots of opportunities there. And then probably the other one that fits into universal AI right at the moment is Copilot. So I think, that's a personal productivity tool. It's not specifically legally trained. So that is, I think, where we could have 100% people. And then in the midsection of the pyramid, you get to what I call focused AI, which is really point solutions, like your business's solution and so forth. So you've got contract markup and analysis. You've got the litigation space is obviously interesting right at the moment with chronologies, particularly that's working well. And then point solutions around patent creation or property transactions, property conveyancing, and so forth. So not everyone needs it. Not everyone's a property lawyer, so not everyone needs access to an AI-enabled conveyancing tool. So that's in the midsection, and so point solutions for what people want. And then right at the top, actually, this might be counterintuitive, I think are the legal research tools, because I don't think that a lot of lawyers spend a lot of their days doing complicated legal analysis. I think that some lawyers do. If you're a competition lawyer, you probably spend a lot of time nutting through difficult things. If you're in-house, you probably don't spend much time at all, on really complex legal questions. And for the most part, lawyers and law firms, a lot of it is, moving documents, moving contracts, moving, litigation related contracts. So I don't think there's a massive need for that complex legal advice capability. So that's, I'll wait and see with that. So that's why I say it. And then just finally on that, my big point for legal teams with embracing AI is, I think what we've seen is that people are approaching legal AI with a product-driven lens. And so they're saying, we're going to roll out, Copilot or Harvey or CoCounsel or Lexis Plus or, VLex, Vincent, whatever it is. And we're going to roll out to everyone. And we're going to see where the use cases are. So that is a very poor idea, I think. Because, and you've started up a business, I've started up a business. When you start up a business, you don't have the luxury of resources and money and so forth. So you make very specific and minimum viable product, which I know will be well understood by you, Tom. But it's an innovation methodology which says you do the smallest amount possible to validate a very clear hypothesis. And I think using product-led innovation is a bad idea. I think where we need to move to is problem-led innovation, where you come to the AI and you say, I'm going to use AI for contract review and markup. And we're going to invest in, this particular tool, and we're going to test it. We're going to spend the smallest amount we can to see if it works with the most engaged lawyers we have, see if they can make it work. If they can make it work, then we double down and we continue doubling down. And whether that's, the same could be said with doing chronologies in disputes and so forth. So that would be my hope for everyone, is that they actually look at it more this year. And I think the tide is turning from a problem-driven innovation lens.
I think that's a great way to look at it, and I hope more people listen to you and do it that way, because you got to focus on the problem first.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. And that's how you find value.
Yes.
And with the time we have left, though, I do want to ask you a couple questions.
Sure.
And I
Sure.
ask all of my guests these questions. Um, Obviously, you have a lot going on, and you have for years. And for people that are watching or listening, and they want to find better ways of being able to do more and keep it, juggle all of that, how do you do it?
Yeah. So I do it by relationships. So I mean, I look back on my career, and it sounds like a lot, doesn't it? And I do, but that's only been achieved because I am continually working with different teams and different people, and I don't hold everything, and I don't, you know, I don't have any sort of aspirations to be, phenomenally rich or anything like that. That doesn't concern me. I'm very interested in, things interest me, and I go down rabbit holes, and then I try to work with teams and find people who are interested in that. So, all of the stuff that I've done have been collaborations. I've never done anything by myself. I mean, it's everything, Norton Rose is a collaboration, Lawpath's a collaboration, Bond University is a collaboration, books that I've done have been collaborations. So that, I mean, that works for me. I don't know, if it necessarily works for everyone, but that is the way that I've been able to seemingly achieve a lot of things. But I've just had a wonderful time with wonderful people along the way. And working on relationships is difficult. It's not, it's not all, sort of roses. You've got to be, very conscious and try and work at those relationships. But yeah, so that would be my thoughts around that.
Well, many hands makes light work.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And so then the last question I have for you is, after doing all of these different projects, like what makes it worthwhile for you? Like, what is the thing that you find satisfying that makes it worthwhile?
Yeah. So one of the things, I mean, so with the bond courses, I've now interviewed over 200 lawyers, and many of sort of global general counsels, global managing partners of law firms, billionaire business owners, and so forth. And they and so I've come up with this there's 10, I think, key human skills that we can focus on um, to help us, find meaning and be successful. And the interesting one that comes up, one of them that comes up all the time with those successful people, is curiosity. And and I don't think be innately curious. I think you can manufacture curiosity. And Einstein had this great quote where he said, I have no special skills other than that I'm extremely curious. And I don't in any way think that I'm anything like Einstein or anything like that. But it is interesting to see, if you have curiosity about things, curiosity about your work, about your workplace, about, your clients, it makes life just so interesting. So I have an extraordinary amount of curiosity about things that interest me. Obviously, if it doesn't interest me, then I won't go down the rabbit hole. But if I do, then I sort of chase it. And then, the final thing that makes it interesting, I had a friend say to me the other day, he's very successful, made a lot of money. And, we just talk about things. He goes, you know what, it never strikes me that you've ever done anything for money. And it's like, well, I mean, I don't think that's 100% accurate, but because it just seems like you just get interested in things and you do it. And I think that's it. I think, I'm just interested. And at its core, to get back to that little kid who probably wasn't having a great time back in Brisbane all those years ago, it was, through stories, I wanted to help people. It didn't happen through actually, making TV, but I feel like I've helped some people along the way, and, Lawpath, and, even, with Norton Rose and the other roles I've had. So that's been sort of the North Star for me, to just, help people as much as I can.
Well, that's a beautiful place to come full circle. And thank you, Nick, so much for being on my show. I've really, really enjoyed this conversation.
Thank you very much, Tom. And thanks everyone for listening. I really enjoyed it. Thank you.
Well, thank you all so much. And we'll see you next time. Thank you so much for watching the latest episode of the LawDroid Manifesto podcast. To keep in the loop about upcoming episodes, please subscribe to LawDroid Manifesto and you'll get notified. Thanks for watching. See you next time.